Call the order of the meeting of the Pleasant Grove City Council in a work session on this Tuesday, October 1st. Well, where did September go? 2019. And we welcome everyone who've come here this evening. We're missing one council member. She'll be close in a few minutes here, so she'll be joining us. And welcome all of you, and thank you for being here, and the staff that has joined us here also. So this evening, our first item on our work session is number one, emergency situations. Scott,
Yeah, so we had I think a couple council members requested a little bit ago for us to talk about emergency procedures, particularly while we are in a public meeting, whether it's a work session or city council. I've asked Chief Roberts to kind of address what the protocols could be in these emergency situations. So maybe a couple scenarios would be an active shooter or somebody who's rushing the dais because they want to physically assault somebody in the room.
Can I speak up really quick?
Sure.
I think hopefully we're very, very general because we're being recorded, right?
Well, if we want, we can turn the stream off for this part.
It's just because you're basically telling people, this is what we're going to do in case something happens, and you're giving away what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so should we turn off the stream?
well,
And
let's,
yeah,
do we
no,
need
we're not
to-
required to stream.
It's not required.
okay.
Well, it has to be recorded, so it will be in the minutes, it will be in the recording, but it won't be live streamed.
It's basically common sense stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we are not required to provide the live stream, so it's okay if we don't, but actually, if somebody really wanted it, obviously they could still get it, they just have to listen to the minutes. The audio will be on the website and the state transparency website anyway, so I don't know if cutting off the live stream is gonna help that much, but legally we can if we want.
Trust me, if somebody's going to do this, they're not going to be looking at our minutes to try to figure out how to do this, so.
Okay, let's proceed. Let's go.
General.
We're good.
Okay,
Welcome, Marty. All right, well, I'll just talk briefly, and like I said, most of it's common sense, but in a situation where there's a possible threat, there's two kinds of threats that you have. One of them is a deliberate threat, and one of them is a dynamic threat. A deliberate threat would be somebody that comes in, sits down, waits his turn to come up to the podium, and either produces a weapon or moves forward and advances on one of you guys. So that would be a deliberate threat. A dynamic threat is when somebody just enters the room and starts shooting, and it's basically chaos. But we'll talk a little bit first about so the procedures you guys want to take if one of those situations arises. You have to remember, I'm sitting in the perfect spot over there where I can see people and identify a threat and act upon it. But the problem is if I'm sitting right there and there's a threat right here, for me to engage them, especially with deadly force, I have to remember that I have all these people behind that I have to account for too. So I would have to maneuver myself in a position where it would just be me and the bad guy that would have the opportunity to get hurt. So I have to look out for all those guys too. But we'll talk about the deliberate first. If somebody comes to the podium, they're upset, they pull out a weapon, they start advancing on it, I'm obviously going to act upon it and try to stop the threat. For you guys, the very first thing I would suggest is go to the ground. The entire dais, these guys don't unfortunately, but the entire dais is bulletproof, so your best bet is to drop down and then try to split and go to these doors. And you've got these guys right here that are going to be having to follow, so it's not going to. Yeah, well, and that's another thing I was going to say is when during council, I would suggest that you all have your keys or your fob or your card right in front of you, so that if something happens like that, you grab your card, you're down, and you're moving to get out instead of trying to fumble through your pockets and find. Does that make sense? Dynamic threat.
Does each of the staff have their own key fob to get into
Yes.
these doors? They do?
Yeah, they
Okay.
should. If you don't, make sure you let me know ASAP, but you all should have one. I'm not sure of the people on this, of you
I
guys.
think I think everybody has one, all the department heads. So we're able to get through that door if we need to.
It would basically just be this half going that way and this half going that way while I engage whatever the threat is. A dynamic threat's a little bit different. I mean, if somebody comes in and starts shooting, it's just fight, run, or hide. I mean, that's what they teach. That's what they teach us. That's what we teach when we go out to businesses, local businesses, and talk about active shooters. It's every man for himself, fight, run, or hide until somebody can engage the threat. So I would keep your key fobs there. Everything in front of there is bulletproof. If somebody moves towards the dais to just attack physically without a weapon, then of course I'm going to go on that way and try to engage them, and you guys just get out of the way and let me get my butt kicked. But I'm happy to do that for you.
That's not very self-confident.
I'll do my best. I have a few over the years, but I'm getting old, so. Any questions, or once you get into the back, your best bet, I mean, you can always go out that door, but you never know what's waiting for you out the door, and you don't. There's actually been some active shooters where somebody's came in and engaged the crowd, specifically with somebody waiting for the place where everybody's going to go to get out and exit the building. So your best bet would be to go through, and this hallway right here is probably the safest hallway in the building, and we kind of designed it that way because we bring our prisoners in through there to come into court, and then we take them back out there, and that way if something happens and they engage the officer that's with them, they're locked. There's no way in or out of that hallway unless we let you in or out. So, and your fob should work for that.
They don't.
They don't? We can.
Your fob does not work
No,
for,
it-
you
it-
should
it
have,
lets- It lets me go out this way, but it doesn't let.
Doesn't let you into the hallway?
Right.
Okay, we can
well,
program them.
they should have access to,
Yeah. And that's just a programming thing. That's just, I mean, we were just learning the system just like
Yeah.
everybody else when we started. So I'll just need to get the numbers off your fobs and we can
I'll
program
text-
that in. But
I'll text it to you.
any other questions or concerns, or, I mean, it's basically you just drop down and try to get out as quick as you can and let me try to engage the threat and
Chief, thanks.
look out for one another. Anything else, Scott, you can think of?
no, I mean, there's one other thing I want to talk about, but
Okay.
thanks, Mike.
And Chief, we appreciate when we, I know in the past when we've maybe felt a threat or we have a large contingent here and back, we appreciate you having additional officers here. and I
Sure,
feel-
and we can do that on
So that's,
a each time basis. So you bet.
we feel a lot better. We hate to have you taken out and then,
That's what I get paid
we're
to
on
do.
our own,
Let's just hope that never, ever, ever happens.
Exactly.
We need to have the discussion just in case, but,
Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
yeah.
Oh, that's actually really good.
Well, the other thing I want to talk about is in a situation where we, a few weeks ago, had a bunch of water leaks kind of happening all at the same time, and making sure there's appropriate communication between staff, council, dispatch, our public relations and things like that, so we can be having, whether maybe a little bit of a dialogue, but at least an avenue to let everybody know what's going on. So one of the things that came to my mind was for us to set up a group app, texting app. For us, if you're familiar with GroupMe, is one of those types of apps that you just download on your phone, and then we put everybody's phone numbers in there, and then you can text the whole group, which would be mayor, council, all the executive staff. Might be a good idea to have Heidi on it and Lisa Flinders on it, because this would be emergency protocols only. We wouldn't be using this for day-to-day operations. This would be if we have a bunch of water leaks and information needs to get out, then we would have an ability to, for whoever is in charge of the incident, for them to shoot out a quick text with information so that when council's engaged or other departments are engaged or dispatch is engaged asking what's going on, they have some actual information that they can relay. If questions start coming in of that nature and no information has been sent out, then that person could send out a text through this app to say, hey, what's going on? So that then whoever's in charge of the incident can see and realize that, okay, I need to respond because we have questions that are coming. So water leaks are a funny thing. We deal with them all the time. For the most part, we are able to figure those out without much disruption to people and shutting off their water and things like that. So we just had a unique situation a few weeks ago with that. But I mean, we also had a situation with the chlorine incident and things that I think we would deem more of an emergency situation where a lot of things are happening in a very short amount of time, and sometimes information is hard to come by. So if everybody's okay with that, I'll work on setting that up. For those that don't have the app, we can work on downloading the app. The app's called GroupMe. You can download the app, and then you'll receive an invite via cell phone, and we'll title it. You'll need to keep your notifications on, particularly for that app on your phone. If you don't have your notifications on and somebody sends a text, you will not see it unless you actively go in and touch the app. So you'll want to keep that notification on so that your phone will beep when something like that happens. With the understanding that, again, just emergency situations only. If we start using it for things other than that, then all of a sudden it kind of becomes a non-emergency and might not garner the quick attention needed if there was something that was urgent in nature and we've been using it for, filling a pothole or something like that. If those needs come up, then we would just suggest as staff that you continue your other protocols, so whether that's a text to us or a phone call or an email for us to handle those situations, which is more of a day-to-day deal, then we prefer that we kind of keep that intact going that way. So are there any questions or concerns regarding setting that up?
Thank you.
Does anybody not understand what I'm saying, I guess? I'm sure Lynn's all over this one, so. But we'll get that set up here in the next week or so, and then we'll do a couple test runs on it, so everybody can be familiar, make sure the notifications are on, and then we'll use it. Hopefully, we don't need to use it much, but it will be available to us when the time comes, so. That's all we had for emergency situations for our
I've got
work
one
session.
for you, Scott, and I really don't know, and I guess I should ask, but, so what happens, got a couple of chiefs over here and the city manager, if we have a major incident where we have, let's say, an earthquake? I don't think we're gonna have a flood, unless the aqueduct breaks, whatever, and that's only gonna take out, so
Well, so
what
a
if
lot
that
of us,
happens? How does that roll out?
Well,
And
so
how are
there's-
we involved, or
Yeah.
what's?
So there's some national standards when it comes to incident command, and there's some trainings that we did, a lot of us did a few years back, and I'm guessing we probably have some department heads that haven't had those trainings. A few of us have had all the trainings, but what happens is, depending on where the center of the incident, if it's an earthquake, then it's probably just, they're gonna send up their command center here and start, so the police and fire, they already have an infrastructure in place that handles all that. What we would probably do is engage our city council to, what's the term we call it? The executive group or whatever. I can't remember the terminology. But you're not, you're there for kind of informational purposes. You're not there to give direction for command as far as what's happening on the ground. But we do have you in an area where you can be updated in real time. And then also if we have to make decisions that might be financial in nature or whatever regarding the incident, that we have you in the room to be able to do that. So I don't know if we need to refresh some of that stuff. I don't know on the NIMS training if you guys are still doing those
I
things.
think the NIMS and the FEMA stuff, we probably should.
Yeah. Because we had a strong push, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago on that, and then we haven't done much, at least as far as getting the department head. They have a special training, I think, for city council members in regards to that. Is NIMS, is that still the protocol, though, when we have the instant issues? So we'll talk, and then if we need to engage with you on some trainings in regards to that, then we'll set that up so that elected officials can be trained on
Okay.
I have a quick,
what we need to
Mayor.
have for you.
I have a question, Mayor, is that
Yes.
right? On that. We talked about in the past about kind of redoing our neighborhood, doing the Cert training, and I know some cities actually do the Cert, and then they actually get some ham operators involved, right? Which is going to be key and critical when these types of things happen. And so I'd like to see maybe us look into that.
We just got radios last week. That's the ham radio room right there.
Out of the, yeah,
We're slowly setting it up,
okay.
so.
I think that's one way we could take our direction of our neighborhood committees or groups, so.
I think a CERT program is going to be a big part of that, because when something does big happen like that, we're going to be on our own for a little while. It's going to be us and our city doing our thing until, it kind of pans out, and then we find out who really needs help, because each city is going to do that same thing. They're going to go through and make sure that their citizens, they're have what they need, they're going through that, and we'll do the same thing. And then once they realize that, then we can start, adjusting equipment and manpower and who needs what and stuff like that. So those first few hours could be the critical ones, so.
And I can remember about 20 years ago, there was a neighborhood, there was a church meeting where there was a paper that was passed around, and it had, do you know how to operate a forklift? Do you have any big, machinery? Do you know how to cook for a large
Oh, I
amount of people?
remember when that came out.
And I remember thinking, these are skills and these are equipment needs that, our chiefs, it would be good for them to have. And I know Eric and I, and Sid, 5, 6 years ago, we had talked a lot about what does our neighborhood group look like, and and maybe that is an avenue. I know that it's best to use already existing organizations, but maybe there is some community information that would be very good to have on hand.
Well, so this is what I recall from our last discussion regarding the neighborhoods, was to use that as kind of our CERT program to engage and try to get individuals in each neighborhood to be a part of CERT. So that's what I recall from that.
So where are we at with that?
Well, I don't know as far as the CERT trainings and who's overseeing that and what we're handling there.
It's Lindsay. She does a class a year with a group.
So do we have specific people set up in neighborhoods, and when she does a class, how do we advertise, and are we getting a good turnout?
It's mostly through the church, but they advertise it. And then they have like block captains and neighborhood captains, and it's organized. There's a flow chart for each neighborhood.
So that's part 2 of it, is the stakes in Pleasant Grove they have certain protocols that we're using. So for instance, if we have an earthquake that is really citywide, then our emergency management people are going to be taking care of the main issues. And some, like our stakes had training, I don't know if every stakes had training, but we've had training on the red badge, the yellow badge, or whatever that goes in the window, so people know whether everybody's safe in there, or whether somebody's hurt, or whether somebody's passed, or whatever. And so the neighborhoods and the infrastructure through the church is going to be the ones kind of taking care of the people around them for this amount of time until the city infrastructure can get to some of this. So depending on what the situation is. If it's a widespread major earthquake and we have homes going down and things like that, I mean, obviously the city response is going to be limited on what they're going to be able to do. And so that infrastructure is in place, and there have been some trains. I don't know if every